Greetings! Way back when, I wanted to record photos and video from my triocular microscope. I chose to use my iPhone for this primarily for two reasons. One, I wanted to transfer content to my MacBook Pro without using an SD memory card. So how would I do that? Well, I'd run the camera's application to configure and capture the content. Okay, the thing is, for all cameras in my price range, each camera's Mac app positively sucks. The Windows app for the camera is always full-featured, and the Mac app is always lobotomized. Why? I don't know, but this was true for every camera I considered. I didn't want to buy Parallels to run the Windows app on my Mac under emulation. There was the cost of Parallels, plus the inelegance of running Windows and having a Windows UI running on my MacBook. Overall, it just felt kludgy. Two, I already owned an iPhone with a great camera and which easily transferred content to my laptop. So, I tested a number of smartphone adapters. I eventually chose the Novagrade Double Gripper. It is fantastic, and it is built like a tank, and it's great for an adapter. Since then, I've gone back and forth over whether to continue using my iPhone in the double gripper adapter. This is the best smartphone adapter on the market, but each time I mount it, I have to fiddle with it to position the lens behind the mounting tube. I could buy another old smartphone and keep it permanently mounted on the adapter. But even if I did that, there'd be challenges from the adapter's physics. Any smartphone adapter, by necessity, hangs to one side, so the lens is positioned over the mounting tube. But the mounting tubes are manufactured to a plus-minus tolerance. So the adapter wiggles when it's attached to the tube. Every adapter does this. Even though the phone is perfectly positioned when you're holding the adapter in your hand, that doesn't mean it's perfectly positioned for the tube. And after all of that, getting a phone call or text messaging while taking microscope videos is at best annoying, and at worst may interrupt your concentration or interrupt the video recording. So, it's cheaper, and transferring photos and video to my Mac laptop just works. But there's more hassle than using a permanently mounted camera. User JoettCars said that I should forget about connecting the camera to the laptop and instead transfer content from the camera using an SD card. Yes, I could do that, but a workflow based on direct connection would be faster. And without a direct connection, to configure the camera, to look at the settings, to modify the settings, I'd need a display, an HDMI display probably, attached to the camera to access the camera settings. Additional hassle and complexity. So, I have finally flipped and switched to using a dedicated camera. But how did that go? I bought an AmScope MU2003. It's a relatively new model. It has 20 megapixels and USB 3.0 via a USB-B socket, which I still don't understand why it's used by microscope cameras, but that's the norm. So once I have the camera, I have to transfer content to my laptop. First, I tried using the Mac version of AmScope's camera app to talk to it. It was unacceptable. It's lobotomized in many ways relative to their Windows version. Why do they do this? Again, I have no idea. I think it's a stupid business model. The Mac and Windows versions of these apps should have identical capabilities, period. Here's some video from the camera taken with the Mac AmScope app at the maximum frame rate. It took some fiddling to get the video to look this good. Here's the same motion recorded on my iPhone 15 Pro. The iPhone's frame rate is much faster than what AmLight allowed, but the image is noticeably desaturated compared to the AmLight image. I knew that the iPhone video was desaturated, but I didn't spend time to understand the reasons why before now. The iPhone shoots in high dynamic range video, i.e. HDR, When that's exported out of the iPhone, it gets simply truncated into SDR, or standard dynamic range, which results in desaturation because information is being discarded. And seeing the richness of the camera's video side by side with the iPhone's, this now bothers me. Well, how do you get around this? Well, you have to understand color spaces management and color profiles, which to me is a pain in the ass. I don't want to have to understand and mess with any of that. So the AmLight camera image looks great until you notice the lousy frame rate. Okay, so the Mac app is no good. Well, what about running the Windows app on Microsoft Windows running on Parallels on my Mac? Let's assume I get past, the issue of running Windows on my MacBook Pro and how ugly that is and Steve Jobs is turning over in his grave. Got it. What about it? Well, it was very hard to get that app running properly. When I was finally able to take videos, I discovered a nasty time dilation effect in the video that was caused by an interaction between Parallels and the application that the software developers hadn't planned for. I won't show you all the weird color effects I encountered, but there were also a few where the camera spaced out and displayed just a purple rectangle or kind of a reddish blue rectangle until I finally rebooted Windows in the Parallels emulator. So there was weird behavior and the final video was unacceptable. So the only remaining option for the dedicated camera approach left would be to buy a cheap laptop just for controlling the camera. This sounds crazy, but it turns out it's the best choice, and I think the only choice if you want good quality video that a Mac user has for a dedicated microscope camera. Windows laptops that have the capabilities to drive this camera are cheap new and even cheaper used on eBay. So I'll have the Windows laptop connected to the camera over USB 3.0. I'll capture the content and then I'll share the content over wireless from the Windows laptop to my MacBook Pro. Some complexity there and it feels kludgy, and I'm buying a laptop just for the camera and I shouldn't have to do that, but I think that's the only option for quality video and photos. So I verified that this works with a friend's Windows laptop, and so that's why I'm switching to it. In fact, today I purchased a lightly used Lenovo IdeaPad 3i 15.6-inch laptop with a Intel Core i3 and 8 gigabytes of RAM off of eBay. It's about $300. So here's a video recorded using the full Windows version of AmScope software running on my friend's laptop. And for comparison, the Mac native AmLight recording as well. And as you can see, the Windows version is just superior, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be running it on a laptop, on a Windows laptop, and transferring it over. I am super happy with this quality. So to sum up, relative to using a smartphone adapter, the separate Windows laptop setup is more expensive. You're buying a Windows laptop and maybe a Windows license, which is non-trivial. Windows 11, about $200, I think, for the license fee. So it's more expensive and it's more complicated. You got to have a Windows laptop sitting next to your microscope, and when you want to use it, you got to boot it up and then run the app and all that stuff, and then you got to transfer the video and photos over to your MacBook Pro where you do your editing. But the content is comparable in quality to what I can get from my iPhone 15 Pro. The camera stays put, and I don't have to mess with the adapter each time I want to record content off the microscope. So that's my big news. I'm now in the dedicated microscope camera camp. And that's all I have for you today. Till next time, take care.